Pamela Warner stepped into the flashing chaos of the press line like a woman walking into a storm she had been chasing her entire life. The world thought the drama ended with Bill Cosby's arrest, but tonight proved it was only the beginning. In one hand, she clutched a crumpled letter, the ink smudged from years of tears. In the other, a small black USB drive that, according to her, could tear Hollywood's glittering mask to shreds. The air around her buzzed with the tension of unasked questions. Reporters jostled for position, fans shouted her name, and somewhere in the crowd, a single voice cut through. "Is it true?" She didn't answer, not right away. Instead, she raised the USB drive so every lens caught it. "My son didn't drown," she said, her voice steady but laced with something dangerous. "He was drowned by silence, by power, by people you've been told to admire." Gasps rippled through the crowd, cameras clicking like gunfire. Pamela's gaze swept over the faces staring back at her, and for a moment, it felt like time had stopped. Then she leaned closer to the microphones, her next words sharp enough to slice through the noise. "And tonight, you're going to hear exactly what they didn't want you to know." Pamela Warner wasn't supposed to be here tonight. Not in front of a wall of cameras, not with the weight of an entire industry pressing down on her shoulders, and certainly not with a voice trembling from secrets she's been forced to carry for years. But here she was, stepping into the glare of flashing lights, every step echoing like a countdown. Fans held their breath. Reporters leaned in. Somewhere deep in the crowd, someone whispered, "This is it. She's finally going to say it." Just days ago, Bill Cosby's arrest had sent shockwaves through Hollywood. Headlines blared. Social media exploded. But no one expected this. No one expected Pamela, the grieving mother of Malcolm, to take the microphone and drop a revelation so explosive it could tear open the carefully stitched seams of the entertainment world. She clutched a worn letter in one hand, the edges frayed from years of being unfolded and refolded, and in the other, a small black USB drive. When she spoke, her voice wasn't loud. "It didn't have to be. They told me to stay quiet. They told me the truth would ruin everything." A pause, the kind that makes the world stop spinning. "But you deserve to know what really happened to my son." And just like that, every camera flash seemed to burn hotter, and every whisper turned into a gasp. The room was so still you could hear the faint hum of the overhead lights. A quiet that didn't match the storm swirling in Pamela Warner's eyes. She stood there, her knuckles white around the USB drive, as if letting go would mean losing the last thread connecting her to Malcolm. People in the front row exchanged uneasy glances, unsure if they were about to witness a confession, an accusation, or the kind of moment that would be replayed on every screen in the country by morning. "You've all heard the headlines," she began, her voice steady but carrying that dangerous undercurrent of pain. "You've seen the footage of him in handcuffs. You've read the statements. But none of you know why my son is gone." A murmur rippled through the crowd, a mix of curiosity and dread. Pamela took a step forward, the cameras following her like vultures circling. "Malcolm wasn't just an actor. He was my boy. He was the one who called me every Sunday, who never forgot my birthday, who still hugged me like he did when he was 10 years old. And now, he's gone. But he didn't just drown. He was drowned." That word hung in the air like a guillotine. Some people gasped, others shook their heads, but no one moved. She opened the USB case with slow, deliberate movements, like she was unwrapping a weapon. "This," she said, holding it up, "is what they wanted buried. This is what they threatened me over." From the sidelines, a young reporter whispered to her colleague, "Is she really going to play it here? Live?" The colleague didn't answer, eyes glued to Pamela. She plugged it into the laptop on the podium, the screen behind her flickering to life. The first image was of Malcolm himself, looking pale and tired, sitting in a dimly lit room. His voice came through the speakers, low and urgent. "If you're watching this, something has happened to me. And it's not an accident." Gasps swept through the audience like a wave. Pamela kept her eyes fixed on the screen, her jaw clenched. The video continued, Malcolm speaking about a network of powerful people, about secrets too dangerous to keep. He mentioned names, names everyone in that room recognized. And with each one, the tension thickened. Suddenly, the video cut to static, then black. Whispers erupted in the room. "What happened?" someone asked loudly. Pamela's voice cut through the confusion. "That's all you need to see for now. The rest is worse. The rest could ruin lives, end careers, and put more people in danger." A man in the front row, dressed in an expensive suit, stood up. "You have no proof. This is just grief talking." His tone was cold, calculated, but there was a flicker of something else in his eyes. Fear. Pamela turned to him, her voice dropping into something sharper. "Don't you dare tell me what grief looks like. I know exactly what I saw, what I heard, and who was involved." The man sat down slowly, avoiding her gaze. Outside the venue, the crowd was growing. News had spread that Pamela Warner was making a public statement, and now the sidewalks were packed with fans, reporters, and curious onlookers. Through the glass doors, you could see people holding up their phones, recording everything, their faces lit by the glow of their screens. Inside, the tension shifted. A friend of Malcolm's, a fellow actor who had worked with him on several projects, stepped up to the microphone. "I knew something was wrong the last time I saw him," he said, his voice shaking. "He told me he felt like he was being watched, followed. But I didn't think it was this bad." Pamela nodded slowly. He was scared, but he wasn't the kind of man to back down. "That's why they had to stop him." She turned back to the crowd. "And I need you all to understand, this wasn't just about my son. This is about every person who's been silenced, every story that's been buried." Someone from the press shouted a question. "Are you saying Bill Cosby was involved?" The room froze, every camera zooming in on her face. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she let the silence stretch until it became almost unbearable. "I'm saying," she finally replied, "that there are connections between my son's death and people who've spent decades hiding the ugliest parts of this industry. And if that includes him, then yes." A wave of murmurs rolled through the audience. Some looked shocked, others seemed unsurprised, like they'd been waiting for someone to say it out loud. Pamela glanced toward the back of the room, where two men in dark suits stood watching her closely. They weren't part of the press, and their presence sent a chill down her spine. "This is bigger than one man," she continued, "and it's bigger than Hollywood. It's about power, control, and the belief that some people are untouchable." Her friend reached for her arm. "Pamela, maybe we should." "No," she cut him off sharply. "I've been quiet for too long. They told me if I spoke, they'd destroy me. But I have nothing left to lose." The lights flickered once, twice, and then the screen behind her went black again. Someone backstage shouted something about a technical problem, but Pamela knew better. "They're here," she said under her breath, but the microphone caught it, sending a ripple of unease through the room. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Part of me wishes I could just walk away from all of this. But every time I think about that, I see his face. I hear his voice." She tapped the USB drive on the podium. "And I remember that he trusted me to finish what he started." From the crowd, a woman's voice called out, "What do you want us to do?" Pamela looked directly at her. "Listen. Remember. Don't let them rewrite this story. Because if they can do it to him, they can do it to anyone." The room erupted into a storm of voices, some shouting questions, others demanding to see the rest of the footage. Pamela didn't answer. She simply gathered her things, tucked the USB back into her pocket, and started toward the exit. The men in dark suits moved slightly, but didn't block her path. As she stepped outside, the night air hit her like a wave, the sounds of the crowd surging forward. Questions, pleas, flashes of light. She didn't stop walking, but her grip on the USB tightened. In her mind, she was already preparing for what came next. Because tonight was only the beginning, and she knew the real fight hadn't even started yet. The cold night air clung to Pamela's skin as the crowd outside surged closer, their voices rising in a mix of questions and shouts. Flashes from cameras cut through the darkness like lightning, each one catching her face in a moment of raw, unguarded emotion. She kept her head forward, shoulders tense, the USB drive pressing into her palm like it was part of her now. A young fan broke through the line of onlookers, holding out a crumpled photo of Malcolm. "Please," she said, her voice trembling. "Tell me what really happened to him." Pamela stopped for the briefest moment, her eyes locking on the girl's. "When the time is right, you'll know," she replied softly, then kept moving. Her driver was waiting at the curb, the black SUV's engine running low and steady. But just as she reached for the handle, a voice called out from behind her. "Pamela! Wait!" It was Terence Cole, an investigative journalist known for digging into the darkest corners of Hollywood. His breath came in quick bursts as he caught up. "You can't just drop something like that and disappear. You need protection, and you need someone who's not afraid to print the truth." She glanced at him, weighing the risk. "Protection?" she asked, almost laughing. "Terence, the only way to stay safe is to stay silent. And that's not an option anymore." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Then let me help. I've been following this since Malcolm's death. I've seen pieces of the puzzle, but you have the whole thing, don't you?" Before she could answer, one of the men in dark suits appeared at the edge of the crowd. His gaze was locked on Pamela, his face unreadable. Terence noticed him too. "Get in the car," he said quickly, opening the door for her. She hesitated for a fraction of a second, then slid inside. Terence followed without asking permission. As the SUV pulled away, Pamela glanced back at the crowd. The man in the suit was still there, watching them leave, his expression like stone. Inside the car, the silence was heavy. Finally, Terence spoke. "I know about Shadow Network," he said. Pamela's grip on the USB tightened. "You shouldn't say that name out loud." He ignored her warning. "I've heard whispers, an organized machine built to protect certain people and erase others. But it's always been rumor. Until now. That video of Malcolm? That's proof." Pamela turned to face him fully. "You don't understand. Proof isn't enough. These people own the narrative. They own the courts, the press, the police. They can make someone disappear without leaving a trace." Terence leaned forward, his voice almost a whisper. "Then we make the proof so public they can't bury it. You release everything." Pamela looked away, her mind racing. "You think I haven't thought of that? But once it's out there, I can't control who gets hurt. There are names in those files that will destroy lives. Some of them don't even know they're part of this." The driver's voice broke through the tension. "We're being followed." In the rearview mirror, Pamela saw a black sedan trailing them, its headlights unwavering. Terence's hand moved instinctively to his phone. "Do you have a safe place?" he asked. Pamela hesitated. "Maybe. But it's not somewhere I ever planned on going back to." "Then it's perfect," he said. The driver made a sharp turn down a narrow side street, tires squealing slightly. The sedan followed. Pamela's pulse quickened. "They're not going to stop," she said quietly. "Then we make them," Terence replied, pulling a small recording device from his jacket. "Start talking, Pamela. Tell me everything. If we don't make it, someone else will hear it." For the next 10 minutes, the car filled with her voice. Calm, deliberate, and laced with the kind of truth that could topple empires. She spoke of meetings behind closed doors, threats made in whispers, and payments hidden behind shell companies. She named people she had once considered untouchable. The driver took another sharp turn, finally losing the sedan in a maze of industrial warehouses. When the road straightened, they all exhaled at once. Pamela leaned back, suddenly exhausted. "There's a storage unit," she said. "It's where I've kept everything that wouldn't fit on this drive. If we go there, you'll see exactly what they've been trying to hide." Terence nodded. "Then that's where we're going." The SUV rolled to a stop in front of a rusted metal door. Pamela stepped out, her heels clicking on the cracked pavement. She punched in a code, and the lock clicked open. Inside, the dim overhead bulb flickered on, revealing stacks of boxes, file cabinets, and a single battered safe. She walked straight to the safe and began turning the dial. "This is the part where they stop playing nice," she said quietly. Terence frowned. "What do you mean?" Before she could answer, the sound of footsteps echoed from outside. Slow, deliberate, getting closer. Pamela froze, her hand still on the safe. Terence reached for his phone, but before he could dial, the metal door slammed shut from the outside, cutting them off from the world. Pamela's eyes met Terence's in the dim light. "They found us," she whispered. And in that moment, the air inside the storage unit felt heavier, as if the walls themselves knew that whatever happened next would change everything. The metal door rattled once, twice, then fell silent. Pamela's breath came fast, sharp in the thick, dusty air of the storage unit. The single bulb overhead swayed slightly, casting jagged shadows over the stacks of boxes that seemed to close in around them. Terence stood with his back against the safe, his eyes scanning the dim space as if expecting something to crawl out from the corners. "Stay calm," he murmured, though his voice betrayed the tremor of someone who knew calm wasn't going to save them. Pamela moved toward the door, pressing her ear against the cold steel. At first, nothing, then faint voices, muffled, male, and far too casual for comfort. One of them laughed, a sound so out of place it made her skin crawl. "They're not here to talk," she whispered. Terence looked toward the safe. "Then we open it now. If they're going to take us, at least we don't go down empty-handed." Her fingers spun the dial with muscle memory, the combination etched into her mind through years of paranoia. The click of the lock echoed like a gunshot in the confined space. Inside, instead of stacks of cash or jewels, were layers of old envelopes, external hard drives, and one large leather-bound notebook with Malcolm's initials burned into the cover. Pamela handed the notebook to Terence. "Start at the marked page," she said. He flipped it open, and his eyes widened as he read aloud in a hushed tone. "Meeting, February 14th. Location, Studio Lot Conference Room B. Attendees, executives, legal counsel. Guest, Bill Cosby." Terence's finger traced a line lower. Discussion topic: mitigation strategies regarding MJW potential public exposure. Proposed contingency: redirect through tragedy. Pamela's voice cracked. "That's the moment they decided my son's life was expendable." A loud bang against the door made them both jump. Dust rained from the ceiling. Terence shoved the notebook into his bag. "We can't stay here." Pamela's eyes darted to the back wall, where a pile of tops and crates hid a narrow maintenance hatch. "Help me," she said, pulling the tops aside. Behind them was a small metal panel barely big enough for one person at a time. They heard the sound of the door's lock being worked from the outside, each clink of metal sending adrenaline surging through their veins. Terence knelt and pried the hatch open with a rusted crowbar he'd found against the wall. Cold air rushed in from the dark tunnel beyond. Pamela gestured for him to go first. "No, you," he said firmly. "You're the one they want." She slid into the narrow passage, the concrete scraping against her shoulders. Terence followed, pulling the hatch closed just as the main door to the storage unit crashed open. Footsteps thundered inside, and muffled voices cursed at finding the space empty. The tunnel was dark and smelled of damp earth. Their footsteps echoed, their breathing loud in the silence. After several minutes, they emerged into an alley behind a row of abandoned factories. Terence pulled out his phone, his hands shaking. "We need to make copies of everything in that bag before they get to us again." Pamela shook her head. "Copies won't matter if no one believes us. They'll just say it's fake, spin it like they always do. The only way this works is if we put it out in a way they can't control." "And how do we do that?" he asked. She looked at him, her expression hard. "We leak it live. Every file, every page, while the world is watching. They can't erase it if it's already everywhere." Before Terence could respond, a sudden vibration buzzed through his jacket pocket. He pulled out his phone and froze. The caller ID read, "Blocked number." He answered cautiously. "Hello." A low voice, distorted, spoke through the line. "You're walking into something you can't walk out of. Drop the files and disappear. This is your only warning." Terence ended the call without a word. Pamela's jaw tightened. They know we're still moving. That means we're ahead of them, for now. They slipped deeper into the industrial district, weaving between buildings until they reached a small, windowless internet cafe. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of old coffee and dust. A lone clerk sat behind the counter, too absorbed in his phone to care about them. Terence chose a computer in the back corner. He connected the first hard drive, its small light blinking like a heartbeat. Files began appearing on the screen. Thousands of them, labeled with dates, names, and cryptic project codes. Pamela scanned the list until she saw one marked, "Final Testimony, P4. She hesitated, her finger hovering over the mouse. This is his last message," she whispered. Terence nodded. "We play it. We decide after that what to do." The video opened to Malcolm sitting at his desk, the same dim lighting from the clip she'd shown earlier. But this time, his eyes were sharper, more determined. "If you're seeing this, then I've run out of time," he said. "But I need you to understand, this isn't about me anymore. It's about what they've built, and how many lives it's already taken." He named people, events, payouts, and threats, each detail more shocking than the last. By the time the video ended, Pamela's hands were trembling so badly she had to grip the edge of the table. Terence looked at her. "We can't sit on this." She nodded slowly. "Then we go live. Tonight." As they began uploading the files to multiple servers, the cafe's door creaked open. Two men in dark suits stepped inside, their eyes scanning the room until they locked on to the corner where Pamela and Terence sat. "Time's up," Terence muttered. The upload bar crawled forward, 72%, 73%, 74%, while the men began walking toward them. Pamela's heart pounded. If they could just buy another minute, maybe two, the truth would finally be free. The men in suits moved with slow precision, their shoes clicking against the worn tile floor like a countdown neither Pamela nor Terence could stop. Every step seemed to shrink the space between them, and yet the upload bar on the screen felt frozen in place at 74%. Terence leaned in close to Pamela, keeping his voice barely above a whisper. "Stall them. Whatever it takes. We just need a little more time." Pamela's pulse thudded in her ears, but she stood up, placing herself between the approaching men and the computer. "Can I help you?" Her tone was steady, but inside, her chest was tightening with every second. The taller of the two men offered a polite, practiced smile. "You've been holding on to something that doesn't belong to you. We're here to collect it." Pamela's eyes didn't flinch. "It belonged to my son. It's mine now." The shorter man's smile was colder. "It belonged to your son, yes. And look what happened to him. You really want to follow in his footsteps." Terence's fingers flew across the keyboard behind her, rerouting the upload through 3 separate cloud servers. 80%. Pamela folded her arms. "You can stand there and make threats all night. Or you can admit you're scared. Scared of what happens when people see what's on those drives." The taller man's expression hardened. "You think this is about fear? No. It's about control. And right now, you're making a very dangerous mistake." In the corner of her eye, Pamela caught the progress bar tick up, 84%. She took a slow step toward the men, narrowing her eyes. Then maybe it's time for someone else to have control. Before they could respond, the cafe's front door banged open and a third figure rushed in. Travis King, a former bodyguard who had once worked for the very people Pamela was exposing. His eyes darted to her, then to the men. "Pamela, you need to move. Now." "What are you doing here?" she demanded. "Paying back a debt," Travis replied. "I couldn't save your son. But I can get you out of here." Terence looked over his shoulder, panic starting to crack through his composure. We're at 90%. The taller man stepped forward, his hand reaching toward the USB still sticking out of the side of the computer. Pamela slapped his hand away with a force that surprised even herself. "You're not touching it." Travis didn't wait for permission. He grabbed Pamela's arm and pulled her toward the back exit. Terrence yanked the USB drive free, shoving it into his pocket just as the shorter man lunged for him. Chairs scraped, the clerk behind the counter shouted something, and the sound of a struggle filled the cramped cafe. Terrence bolted for the exit, nearly colliding with Pamela and Travis in the narrow alley behind the building. 96%, he gasped. "If they cut the power, we lose everything." Travis cursed under his breath and scanned the alley. "There's an old broadcast station 2 blocks from here. If we can hook into their tower, we can finish the upload from there. Once it's in the airwaves, they can't pull it back." Pamela hesitated for only a second before nodding. "Go." They ran through the deserted streets, the sound of footsteps and shouting not far behind. The broadcast station loomed ahead, its tower like a jagged spear against the night sky. Inside, the place was half abandoned, dust coating the consoles and monitors, but the main transmitter still hummed faintly. Terrence plugged in the USB and began typing furiously. Pamela paced, her fists clenched. "How long?" "Less than a minute if they don't find us," Terrence said. Travis stood guard at the door, his stance tense, eyes locked on the shadows outside. "We don't have a minute." As if on cue, a silhouette appeared in the doorway. One of the suited men stepped into the room, his face unreadable. "You really think you're heroes? You're just pawns in a game you can't win." Pamela stepped forward, her voice low but fierce. "Maybe, but pawns can still take down a king." The man took another step, but Travis blocked him. "Not tonight," he said, his voice like steel. On the screen, the progress bar hit 99%. The man in the suit lunged forward, but Terrence slammed the enter key. "Upload complete." Pamela's knees nearly gave way as the words flashed on the monitor. "It's out," she breathed. "It's finally out." The suited man's expression twisted, not with rage, but something far more telling. Fear. He backed away slowly, pulling a phone from his pocket as he disappeared into the shadows outside. Terrence turned to Pamela, a mix of triumph and disbelief on his face. "They can't bury it now. It's everywhere." But Pamela didn't smile. "You don't understand," she said softly. "This is just the beginning. Now they're going to come after everyone connected to this." Outside, the distant wail of sirens cut through the night, growing louder. Pamela looked at Travis and Terrence, her voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. "We need to disappear. For now. But when the dust settles, we finish this." The sirens were closing in fast, bouncing off the walls of the empty street like a warning they couldn't ignore. Travis motioned for Pamela and Terrence to move, his eyes scanning the dark alleys branching off from the broadcast station. "We can't take the main roads," he said, his voice tight. "Too many eyes, too many cameras." Pamela's legs felt heavy, but adrenaline kept her moving. "Where are we going?" she asked, glancing over her shoulder as if the suited men might step out of the shadows at any second. "Somewhere they won't think to look," Travis replied. "I know a safe house. No cell service, no paper trail. You'll be ghosts." Terrence caught up to them, still clutching the USB drive like a lifeline. "The upload's live on 3 platforms, mirrored across private servers. Even if they shut it down, too many people already have it." Pamela's breath came in ragged bursts, but she didn't slow down. "Good. Let them try. Every time they erase it, more people will ask why." They slipped into a narrow passage between 2 crumbling buildings, the smell of damp brick and rust filling the air. Travis led them down a hidden staircase that disappeared beneath the street, the sound of the sirens fading as they descended. The safe house was little more than a basement with concrete walls and a single dim bulb hanging from the ceiling, but it felt like a fortress compared to the chaos outside. A battered couch sat against one wall, and a table cluttered with maps and radio equipment filled the other. Pamela sank into the couch, her hands trembling now that the immediate danger had passed. "It's out there now," she said quietly, almost to herself. "People are watching it right now." Terrence sat across from her, pulling out his phone to check the feeds. "They're not just watching. They're reacting. Hashtags are trending. Journalists are calling it the biggest Hollywood leak in decades. Protesters are already gathering outside the courthouse." Pamela's eyes softened for the first time that night, a flicker of relief breaking through the exhaustion. Malcolm's voice. "It's finally louder than their silence." Travis paced near the door, his ears tuned for any sound outside. "You both need to understand something," he said, his tone grim. "You just kicked a hornet's nest. The people in those files, they have resources you can't even imagine. And they're not going to sit back while the world picks apart their secrets." Pamela leaned forward, her elbows on her knees. "Then we don't sit back either. We stay ahead of them. We dig deeper." Terrence hesitated. "Deeper? Pamela, we've already risked everything. What's left to find?" She reached into her bag and pulled out a small, sealed envelope. "This," she said, sliding it across the table. Malcolm left it hidden in the lining of his jacket. "I haven't opened it yet." Terrence and Travis exchanged a look as she tore the envelope open. Inside was a folded sheet of paper and a key. The paper had only a short message, written in Malcolm's handwriting. "If you're reading this, you've made it this far. But the real proof? It's in locker 317. Pamela stared at the key in her palm. "He planned for this," she whispered. "He knew there was more." Terrence's mind was already racing. "Do you know where the locker is?" "I have an idea," she replied. "And if I'm right, what's in there will make tonight look like the opening act." The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of the revelations settling over them. Then Travis straightened, his decision made. "We move at dawn. The longer we wait, the harder it'll be to get in." Pamela met his eyes. "And once we have it, we burn the whole machine to the ground." Outside, the city was still buzzing. News vans clogging streets, reporters broadcasting in urgent tones, and strangers holding signs with Malcolm's name written in bold letters. Somewhere in the distance, fireworks cracked against the night sky, as if the world itself was acknowledging that something had shifted. But in the shadows, far from the cameras, the people who'd been exposed were already regrouping. In boardrooms, behind locked doors, on encrypted calls, they whispered about damage control, about making examples out of those who had dared to speak. Back in the safe house, Pamela folded the paper and tucked the key into her pocket. For the first time since her son's death, she felt something other than grief, purpose. She stood, her voice steady, her gaze fixed on the cracked concrete wall like she could see through it to the fight ahead. "They thought they could erase Malcolm," she said. "But all they've done is make sure his story outlives every one of them." Travis nodded once. "Then let's finish what he started." In that dim, hidden room, the three of them made an unspoken pact. Dawn would bring another battle, but tonight, the truth had finally broken through, and there was no going back. The sun was barely a pale glow on the horizon when the safe house door creaked open. The city outside was waking up to headlines that felt like the opening scene of a film no one thought they'd ever see. Malcolm-Jamal Warner's name was everywhere, his voice echoing across news broadcasts, podcasts, live streams. The files Pamela had risked everything to release were being dissected by journalists, lawyers, and ordinary people who had never even heard of Shadow Network until last night. Pamela stood by the narrow window, the small key still warm in her palm. The locker, the next step, was waiting. She didn't know exactly what was inside, but she knew Malcolm had left it for her with purpose. That thought alone kept her spine straight, even as fear whispered its familiar warnings. Terrence scrolled through his phone, shaking his head. "It's out of their hands now. Even if they come after us, the story's already too big to kill." Travis checked the street outside one last time. Stories don't end because the truth's out. They end when the people listening decide what to do with it. Pamela turned to face them, her voice calm but unshakable. Then we keep telling it until no one can look away. To everyone watching this, you've now heard what they tried to bury. You've seen how far they'll go to silence the truth. But the truth isn't just Malcolm's anymore, it's ours. So I'm asking you, don't let it fade. Share this video. Talk about it. Put it everywhere they can't touch. Hit like if you believe in exposing the machine. Subscribe so you don't miss the next step in this fight. And tell me in the comments, what would you risk to make sure the truth is heard? Because this story isn't over. It's only just begun.